The Transfiguration. It was early morning when Jesus led Peter, James, and John up a high mountain. The climb was steep, the air cool and crisp, and the solitude enveloped them as they ascended. Though they didn't know why they had been called aside, they trusted him, their hearts filled with quiet anticipation. They reached the summit, a place untouched by the noise of the world below, and there Jesus stopped, turning to face them. What happened next left them breathless. Before their very eyes, Jesus was transfigured. His face shone like the sun, a brilliance so intense it seemed to radiate the very glory of heaven. His garments turned dazzling white, brighter than anything they had ever seen, like light itself, pure and unblemished. The three disciples shielded their eyes, astonished, as the very essence of his divine nature was revealed to them. Then, as if the moment could become even more extraordinary, two figures appeared alongside him, Moses, the great lawgiver, and Elijah, the fiery prophet. They stood in conversation with Jesus, their presence unmistakable. The disciples, stunned, could only watch as the men who embodied the law and the prophets spoke with the one who had come to fulfill them. Peter, overwhelmed by the sheer wonder of it all, found his voice. "Lord," he stammered, his heart racing, "it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 tabernacles, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." His words spilled out in awe and nervous eagerness, a desire to preserve the sacredness of the moment. But before he could finish speaking, a bright cloud descended, enveloping them all in its light. The disciples froze as the voice, spoke from the cloud, its power resonating deep within their souls. "This is my beloved Son, with whom I am well pleased. Listen to him." The sound was unlike anything they had ever heard, shaking them to their very core. Fear gripped them, and they fell face down to the ground, trembling in reverence and awe. The voice of God had spoken, confirming what they had begun to understand, that Jesus was no mere teacher or prophet. He was the very Son of God. Then, as the light softened and the overwhelming presence lifted, they felt a touch on their shoulders. "Get up," Jesus said gently, his voice calm and familiar. "Do not be afraid." Slowly, the disciples lifted their eyes, and to their astonishment, Moses and Elijah were gone. Jesus stood alone, his radiance now tempered, his expression steady as he looked at them. As they descended the mountain, the disciples were quiet, their minds racing to comprehend what they had seen and heard. But Jesus, ever purposeful, gave them an instruction. "Tell the vision to no one until the Son of Man has risen from the dead." They nodded, though the full meaning of his words eluded them. Finally, one of them broke the silence. "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" The question hung in the air, tinged with the wonder of what they had just witnessed. "Elijah is coming and will restore all things," Jesus replied, his tone thoughtful. "But I say to you that Elijah already came, and they did not recognize him, but did to him whatever they wished. So also the Son of Man is going to suffer at their hands." The disciples exchanged glances, and understanding began to dawn. He was speaking of John the Baptist, the one who had come in the spirit of Elijah, preparing the way for the Messiah. They realized, too, that Jesus was pointing to his own path, a path of suffering and rejection that would ultimately lead to glory. As they reached the base of the mountain, the air seemed to hum with the significance of what they had experienced. The vision of the Transfiguration, the voice of God, and the presence of Moses and Elijah had given them a glimpse into the majesty of Jesus' identity. Yet it also carried with it the shadow of the cross, a reminder that glory and suffering were inextricably linked. For Peter, James, and John, the memory of that day would remain seared into their hearts, a revelation of the divine that would sustain them through the trials to come, as they followed the one who was truly the Christ, the Son of the living God. The demoniac. The air was filled with tension as Jesus and the 3 disciples descended from the mountain, the glory of the transfiguration still fresh in their minds. But the serenity of that sacred moment gave way to a bustling crowd at the base of the mountain. Voices rose in agitation, a mix of pleading and frustration, and amidst it all, a man broke free from the throng, falling to his knees before Jesus. "Lord, have mercy on my son," the man cried, his voice raw with desperation. Tears streamed down his face as he continued, "He is very ill, for he often falls into the fire and into the water. I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." The weight of the Father's anguish pressed down upon the disciples, who stood silently nearby, their expressions a mixture of shame and confusion. Jesus' face was grave as he looked at the scene before him. "You unbelieving and perverted generation," he said, his voice carrying both sorrow and righteous frustration. "How long shall I be with you? How long shall I put up with you? Bring him here to me." The man quickly beckoned his son forward, the boy trembling and visibly unwell. Jesus stepped closer, his presence commanding yet filled with compassion. With authority, he rebuked the evil spirit that tormented the child. Instantly, the demon fled, and the boy was restored, calm, whole, and at peace. The crowd gasped, or rippling through them as they witnessed the miraculous power of Jesus. The father fell to his knees again, this time in gratitude, clutching his son tightly. Tears of relief replaced those of sorrow as he looked up at Jesus, his voice trembling. "Thank you, Lord. Thank you." The crowd murmured in astonishment, some praising God, others overwhelmed by what they had seen. Later, away from the crowd, the disciples approached Jesus privately. Their earlier failure weighed heavily on them, and their voices were filled with uncertainty as they asked, "Why could we not drive it out?" Jesus turned to them, his expression kind but firm. "Because of the littleness of your faith," he explained. "For truly I say to you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move, and nothing will be impossible to you." His words, though convicting, carried a glimmer of hope. Faith, even in its smallest measure, had the power to achieve the unimaginable. But he added, "This kind does not go out except by prayer and fasting." It was a lesson in both spiritual preparation and reliance on God, a reminder that the power to heal and cast out came not from their own strength, but from their connection to the Father. As they walked together through Galilee, the gravity of their journey became ever clearer. Jesus turned to them, his tone somber yet resolute. "The Son of Man is going to be delivered into the hands of men," he said. "They will kill him, and he will be raised on the 3rd day." The disciples fell silent, deeply grieved by his words. The weight of his prediction was almost too much to bear. Though they had seen his power and glory, the thought of his suffering and death filled them with sorrow. Yet even in their grief, a seed of faith began to grow, a mustard seed of hope that, though they couldn't yet fully grasp it, would one day move mountains. The tribute money. The streets of Capernaum bustled with life as Jesus and his disciples made their way into the town. The warm air carried the sense of the market, and the hum of daily activity filled their ears. Amid the crowd, Peter found himself approached by the tax collectors, their eyes sharp and their words direct. "Does your teacher not pay the 2 drachma tax?" one of them asked, their tone tinged with a mix of curiosity and challenge. Caught off guard but eager to defend his master, Peter quickly replied, "Yes, he does." With that, the collectors nodded and moved on, leaving Peter to return to the house where Jesus awaited. The exchange, though brief, lingered in his mind as he stepped through the doorway. Before Peter could utter a word about what had happened, Jesus, ever aware, spoke first. "What do you think, Simon?" he asked, his tone calm and measured. "From whom do the kings of the earth collect customs or poll tax? From their sons or from strangers?" Peter considered the question, the logic of it unfolding in his mind. "From strangers," he answered. "Then the sons are exempt," Jesus replied, a gentle smile gracing his face. His words were layered with meaning, a quiet declaration of his identity as the Son of God, free from earthly obligations like this tax. Yet his expression grew thoughtful, and he continued, "However, so that we do not offend them." Jesus' words hung in the air, a reflection of his wisdom and humility. He understood the importance of avoiding unnecessary conflict, choosing to meet the expectation while pointing to something far greater. "Go to the sea," he instructed Peter, his voice steady, "and throw in a hook. Take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a shekel. Take that and give it to them for you and me." Peter, though perhaps puzzled by the unusual command, obeyed without hesitation. He walked to the shoreline, the familiar sound of the waves filling his ears. Casting his hook into the water, he waited, his faith steady despite the strangeness of the task. Moments later, the line tugged, and Peter reeled in the first fish. As he carefully opened its mouth, his breath caught. There, gleaming inside, was a shekel, exactly as Jesus had said. He held it in his hand, marveling at the miraculous provision, his heart swelling with a mix of wonder and gratitude. Returning to the tax collectors, Peter handed over the coin, fulfilling the obligation. Yet in his heart, he carried a deeper understanding of the one he followed, a master who, though divine, chose humility and compassion, meeting the needs of others while revealing the truths of the kingdom of heaven. For Peter, this moment was more than just a provision for the tax. It was a glimpse of the wisdom, sovereignty, and gentleness of Jesus. As he walked back to the house, the shekel's glint still fresh in his mind, he felt the profound privilege of walking with the one who carried the authority of heaven in every step.